Yeah, hello everyone. Good afternoon and welcome to this session. Hello, esteemed panelists. Nice to see you all there. We look forward to a very interesting interaction this afternoon. Let's get started first by giving a brief about this particular series of virtual events that ISEC is conducting in partnership with CII Bhopal and we NSN as knowledge partners on the occasion of World Youth Skills Day. I would call it World Youth Skills Week or a World Youth Skills Month or whatever, because the idea of extending a particular day to involve more and more people is simply wonderful. And in case all of you have been following this year, the World Youth Skills Day seems to have got the maximum kind of visibility and traction with so many types of organizations and institutions holding various types of events, virtual events, competitions, and so many things. So I think it's really something great that's happening to the vocational education and skilling space. And in India, I think we are simply doing whatever is possible to convey the message that skills are the future in addition to formal education. So in that context, to give you a brief about World Youth Skills Day, very briefly, I'm sure all of you who have been attending these events for the last 4 days, today being the fifth one, you would have heard from various speakers about the significance of the day. So I will not repeat myself, but just to tell you briefly, the day is very important because UN had decided to host this from 2014 onwards on 15th July. And since then, it has caught on in every country to create awareness for advocacy and for making people, getting more engagement from various stakeholders in terms of telling youth, hey, look, skills are important in addition to your degrees to become employable or to become an entrepreneur. So with this note, I would also like you to give a brief about Kaushal Charcha, which is a series, as this series is called. And Charcha, as you know in Hindi, would mean discussion or deliberation. But I'd be very happy if the panelists in this discussion would not limit it just to discuss, but to give some points which can be acted upon, which could be like the outcome or takeaway from this session, something concrete, which people will be very happy to, get from this session. So I would request all the panelists to keep thinking about some solid action points or points which can become the way forward to carry the discussion around enabling women empowerment through skills. So that's the session. That's what the session is about today. So on day 5, we are moving ahead with how women empowerment can happen through skills. And probably this is something not new. As we all know, for ages, women who are skilled are empowering themselves, and women who are skilled and educated have taken leads to do many things, and women who are empowered and women who are skilled and educated have also shown paths to others, to follow. And in the panelists, among the panelists also, we have quite a few women leaders, Veena ma'am, and then Mona Gupta and Aditi Chaturvedi, who are all leading various things. And it would be nice to get started by with a small introduction. So let's learn more about Ms. Veena Swaroop. Let me share my screen and
It's an identity that are verified installations where you can say the promotional campaigns.
yeah. So Ms. Veena Swaroop, I'm very happy to introduce her once again. I had this opportunity some time back also. She is a senior person from the industry, and she's also one of the women leaders who has led HR in the public sector undertaking, that's Engineers India Limited. She's a management professional with more than 3 decades of experience in PSUs, and she's also the former director HR at Engineers India Limited, and she superannuated in the year 2016. But that hasn't stopped me, Veena ma'am, from being active. We have seen her quite active, always in various forums discussing and also leading various missions and various other activities connected with skills and entrepreneurship. She was also very closely associated with FICCI, and she has served the industry, as we saw in the public sector. And besides this, she's also actively involved in helping women entrepreneurs, promoting women entrepreneurship from the Delhi School of Management. And then the other important institutions and bodies where she has been actively involved are FICCI, AIMA, DMA, IOD, NHRD, IPE, FORE, and SPJIMR. So she is the founder and chairperson of Network of Women Entrepreneurs, along with a fellow of uh, All India Management Association and World Academy of Productivity Sciences. Ms. Veena Swaroop has been recognized with various awards that include HR Leadership Award by Asia Oil and Gas Congress, HR Professional Award by Asia Pacific HR Congress, IPHR Leadership Award, and World Women Leadership Award by Women Leadership Congress. So welcome to this session, ma'am. We are really delighted and privileged to have you here. So we look forward to your suggestions, your inputs, your experience to make this a very enriching session. And next we have Ms. Mona Gupta, who is the CEO of DWSSC, that is Domestic Workers Sector Skill Council. Ms. Mona Gupta has been actively involved in the cause of the domestic workers, and as an alumnus of IIM Ahmedabad with a very rich experience in change management, socioeconomic development, industry brands, international development organizations, and apex associations. So coming from this background, she has been actively trying to put together this particular sector skill council and bring in new insights and fresh thinking to see how the lives of the domestic workers can be improved through skills. Her key focus areas include public policy and advocacy, international business partnerships, MSME and informal sectors, entrepreneurship, and many other aspects of skill development and livelihood enablement, plus gender management. Ms. Gupta has been awarded with various global recognition and also a certified program management from World Bank, CSR, ESG, and UN gender management by UN and ILO. So we have a person who's connected with so many organizations. So welcome to this session, Ms. Mona Gupta. We look forward to hear from you about the various issues about skilling domestic workers, and particularly with regard to women empowerment, as that's the focus of this session. And we have Dr. K.K. Upadhyay, Chairman, DNR Foundation, and Director, CSR Consultants. Uh, so Mr. Upadhyay is very widely recognized and respected for being a development professional with over 4 decades of experience across government, not-for-profits, academia, and corporate. He has pioneered several innovative and outstanding social enterprises like Safal Apni Yojana, Bastar Integrated Development Program, and Health of the Urban Poor. As an alumnus of GB Pant University of Agriculture and Technology and IRMA, Dr. Upadhyay has been playing a pivotal role in the CSR journey of India, and he is also a thought leader, a practitioner, and former head of FICCI Aditya Birla CSR Center for Excellence. In recognition of the positive impact to the society through his innovative and sustainable CSR practices, Dr. Upadhyay has been conferred titles like Thought Leader, CSR Leader of India, Mahatma, and the CSR Trainer of the Year 2020. So welcome to this session, sir. We are indeed privileged to have you, and we would like to learn from you more about your perspectives on women empowerment through skills. And then we have Ms. Aditi Chaturvedi Vats, who's the director, ISECT. Ms. Chaturvedi has studied Bachelor of Engineering in Electronics and Communication and PG Diploma in from IRMA, and she's the director of ISECT. She's been associated with ISECT for a decade, wherein she's been handling ISECT skilling programs, operations, coordination with franchisee outlets, and various other programs, and planning and implementation at the state level skill development, along with launching of new products. Ms. Aditi also looks after the implementation of projects related to women and girls beneficiaries, and she's compiled success stories of women entrepreneurs in ISECT networks. She's also coordinating Pehchan, an initiative of ISECT to celebrate women entrepreneurship. So with this, I would like to once again welcome all the panelists and take forward this session uh, by asking few points, few questions. I won't call them questions, but few discussion points which I think are today really burning issues in the backdrop of the fact that women participation in the labor force has drastically reduced over the last 10 decades. And this is a fact that we hear day in and day out. The numbers keep changing every day. So I'm not going to quote the numbers. But what is important is to remember that women labor force participation is drastically going down in India when compared to our neighboring nations as well. So I would like to get started by asking the panelists one very simple question. How do we combine skills, entrepreneurship, and bring women into the fore and look at it as something which is beyond gender? If you look at the way women's skilling programs are seen today, there is a very stereotypical way of skilling women. If it is skill development programs for women, it is mostly okay either in apparel or in beauty or in things which we feel are very women oriented. So is that something which is coming in the way of making women participate in a world where we are talking about industry 4.0, latest technologies and many other things? So in this backdrop, do you think that women participation in labor force is being affected with the kind of definition we are giving to skilling programs in women, with the kind of scope we are giving to skilling programs in women? So we would like to hear from you, Veena ma'am, first.
Thank you, Madhuri, and thank you to the organizers for having me here. Am I audible, Madhuri?
Yes, ma'am. Yes.
So thank you for having me here today. In fact, this topic is so apt when we talk about enabling, empowering women through skilling, because the biggest tool for empowering anyone is education and skilling, and it's through that that they actually get independent, men, women, both of them, all genders. And now coming to the point that you raised about how do we improve on it and see that there has to be a logical end to it. I feel, you see, you can't just skill people for the sake of skilling and for the sake of numbers and then expect that those women will reach places and do something. So whenever a skilling program is made, first of all, I would urge everyone, and that's what I believe in, don't fix it for women or men. Don't make it gender specific. Let the program be a program for all and give them that confidence, give them that kind of a thought that they can apply for any job, they can apply through any skill. Once that is open to them, they should make the right choice, whether they go for apparels, whether they go for beauty and wellness, whether they go for domestic workers, depending on whatever their capabilities are and whatever their education levels are. Some people get skilling after education, higher education. Some people are only dropouts and we are skilling them. So they're varying categories. They must make the right choice and we must do counseling to see that they are. But whenever there's a skilling program, there must be an end of that tunnel, that after that program, what comes after that? Is it going to be entrepreneurship? Is it going to be placements? So I'll stop here for others to speak. Maybe we'll discuss it a little further. Thank you.
Yes, ma'am. Thank you so much for raising this point about, giving them counseling and making it outcome based. I would request Ms. Mona to add on to this or share your views on this, particularly from the domestic workers perspective, where it is so very, stereotypically, aimed at women. And also it is not seen as aspirational at any level. So there are many challenges. So how do you see this, Ms. Gupta? You're not audible. Please unmute yourself.
Yeah, yeah.
Yeah.
So coming from a background where I was with fashion industry, working with brands like IKEA and fashion designers like Issey Miyake, I was actually living in a glass ceiling, at that point of time. And when I went down the supply chain, and which we call upstreaming, I discovered that the best of the products and the brands were being made by women sitting at home, and there was no accountability. They were not even part of the supply chain. So I would like to take a step back and address your question. When we talk of the labor participation of women, I feel it is also because many of them are not accounted for. You know, there is a lot of unaccounted labor participation of women, whether they're working in the rice fields or they're working in, the fashion supply chains or even domestic workers. So even the domestic workers, if we see, most of them are unaccounted for. And I think partly the numbers that are also projected by ILO and other organizations is also because of the informality. So while we do not want the informality to go, because that's a very inherent part of our ecosystem, and that is one which is resilient to economic up and down. It is 70% of all our industry, literally it is 70% of all our sectors. We need to bring them into the formal workforce also. So that is one point. And number two, coming to domestic workers, very rightly you have pointed out that this is a women-dominated sector. It has been a women-dominated sector. And you will be surprised that the biggest problem that we face here is not skilling. There is a huge demand for skilling. There is a huge demand for placement. But there is a huge cultural and social stigma attached to their migration. So what happens is that with the kind of safety measures, with the kind of human trafficking that happens in the industry, all around us, and even if you could see that it also links to why, women are not working night shifts in many of the industries. At point of time, the government has also put a stipulation there, that night shifts are very limited for women participation. So, it is these kind of social cultural factors which women, particularly in the domestic worker sector, has made them either, hidden from the main workforce participation, even skilling them. And, what happens is when we skill a batch of women and they are placed in the cities, bad experiences, returnee migrants, unsafe conditions, and nobody is accounting for their safety or for their benefits or insurances. What happens is, and particularly the COVID has shown that they were forced to return back, right? And with these kind of things, what happens is that we found that a mobilization strategy, a proper mobilization strategy, needs to be put into place to empower them and enlighten them how to move forward. So these are my first views on this. And
Thank you, Ms. Mona
Yeah.
Gupta, for sharing your views. Now I'd like to go ahead, ask Dr. Upadhyay about two important points which have just come from the previous panelists. One is about, mobilizing women and then sharing the correct information, and also like Ms. Gupta was pointing out about the informal sector, being one of the hurdles in accounting for the right numbers. And as Veena Swaroop ma'am has also mentioned about counseling and creating the right kind of an atmosphere for skilling to happen. And most importantly, she said skilling is not a goal in itself. So Dr. Upadhyay, how would you add to this from your experience in the CSR sector, particularly the idea about skilling not being a goal in itself, and relating it with skilling women in various industry sectors? Could you please unmute yourself, Dr. Upadhyay? Yeah.
Thank you. I will take it in a little another way. Like when we are talking about CSR, we are talking about communities basically, whether it's rural or urban communities, and we are talking about the community as such. So that's where we are looking at skills from the point of view of the community. Can we work with the community? How do we provide differently, whether it's women or youth, how we can provide them with the jobs which they can retain? We had a lot of experiments actually. But what has happened, there's a lot of learning, and with lot of jobs, like say we have a center, the airport company, they have a center in Dwarka. And we trained a lot of ladies. But two issues came very forefront. One was they didn't want to go to another place. Like say in Delhi also, they wanted within their locality or near their house. Second thing was also pay. When we say we talk about 5,000 to 15 to 20,000 maximum. So that's what for a person to go to another place, even in Delhi, it doesn't look very good. And another thing which is happening, lot of companies are doing very good experiments like JSW. They have done with women working on steel fabrication. And that experiment has been very successful. And it's an example where people quote it also. So two things are very important. One is will of the company, whether they really want to do it. And second thing is going to the level of the beneficiaries or the people who you are training basically. Providing them those type of facilities, environment which is suitable to their culture. As Mona said, this is also a cultural issue, not just a skill issue. Thanks a lot.
Thank you. Thank you, Dr. Upadhyay. Yeah, so we see another perspective coming in here, not only about skilling, but also skilling connected with migration, with the wages that women receive. So I think what we are understanding from the panelists till now is that skilling in itself is not a goal and it's not an issue as such, but what happens post skilling is a much more important thing to understand and discuss further. So in that connection, I'll ask Aditi now about her experience with ISECT. I'm also assuming that she's been interacting with a lot of young girls. So when we talk about women, let's include these girls also who would be getting into careers, and her experience about skilling them, training them, and also maybe you can tell us a little bit about perhaps technology related skilling and training as well, Miss Aditi. So please share your views. Yeah. All
Yeah, thank you, Madhuri ma'am. And I welcome all the panelists and the audience on behalf of ISEC Group to this Kaushal Charcha. And as far as our experience goes, we are working with the women folk in two aspects. We are actually developing women entrepreneurs also in our network and also training girl students in the skilling ecosystem. So as far as women entrepreneurs are concerned, the process is very smooth because these women come up to us and they have their own initiative and they have their own will to become entrepreneurs, and a lot of hand holding is required. But as far as skilling is concerned, we all of us understand that these students come from a very backward area. Our target segment has always been in the district and the block and the panchayat level, and the awareness level is very low. So what I feel is the has a very important role to play in this part. And mobilization, we have a lot of innovative ways in which we do mobilization. But when the students comes to a center, the counselor has to not only convince the female candidate, but also the parent. So a main aspect which comes in here is the counseling of the parents, which we do on and off, not only at the time of admissions, but during the course curriculum and also at the time of placements. The second part is that they are not aware about the job prospects which are available and what kind of sectors are prevalent. So a lot of guest lectures and industry visits in and around their area is one thing which we've picked up very recently, very vigorously. And in the past 10 years, we've put this in our course curriculum that so many industry visits and so many guest lectures have to take place, because we can't skill them and leave them in the environment. They should know what is coming ahead and what is there in future for them. As far as employment is concerned, we were only doing offline employment through our own Rozgar Mantra initiative, but we've now converted that into online portal, and we have an online and an offline support system as far as Rozgar and placements are concerned. So we have after the course is completed and after the skilling process is done, we have a lot of Rozgar drives or job fairs which we conduct in the local areas itself and connect the local employers, so that the issue of migration, which comes in more profoundly in women and female workers, doesn't set in that much, and we have a strong hand-holding support post placement also, because we have our representatives in the local areas, and thus give them hand-holding support after they are placed in one company, and also understand the need, and if they need a job change, we also give them that service. And therefore what I understand is that the support, it needs to be given at every step of the value chain in skilling, and not only at the beginning or in the end. So it has to be a spread out effort.
Yeah. Thank you for sharing your views, Aditi. I think now we have a very wide perspective of views, you know, touching upon various aspects of skilling which is going into entrepreneurship and also, you know, into the jobs, the employment part. Yes, Veena ma'am, would you want to share a few points? Could you please unmute yourself?
Just a small point, if you give me a moment, I agree
Sure.
with Aditi on that. And what I noticed, that it was sometime back, maybe about 3, 4 years back, I was helping a university set up a skill development center for underprivileged women at Noida and Greater Noida. And what she said is very right, that when we were mobilizing, the mobilizing teams went there. They were thrown away by the parents of those villages. They wouldn't allow them to enter, and the girls and the women themselves also were so hesitant for it that we had to really make a lot of effort to get them onto the campus and give them that training. And I believe me, it was a 3 months training, and there were batches for 3 months. And the first batch, 3 batches that we had, 2 were sewing machine operator and one was for computer training. You will not believe it. Within 1 week, I saw the turnaround in them, the confidence level that came. So a lot of soft skills were shared with them, and it was a part of the entire curriculum. And on the finale, when we were giving away certificates, they were so confident that they were speaking on the mic. And then we helped them to form self-help groups. So as she rightly said, and as Mona also mentioned, it's the rural India where we need to actually ramify, because a lot of skilling focus is happening in the tier 2, tier 3 cities. But what happens to the rural India? Major people are there. So programs need to be done there, and we need to create opportunities for them there. Thank you.
Thank you, ma'am, for sharing this point. I would have anyways asked you to tell us little more, which I'll do right soon after this quick summary of the points which I got just now from all of you. So as you've been watching, our panelists have touched upon various aspects of skilling women, and it's not skilling for itself, as we just heard from them. And skilling is not, has nothing to do with gender as such, but then over the years, it has evolved like few job roles are meant for women, few skills are meant for women, and it's high time we break the stereotypes. So let's move ahead now with the second part of the discussion, where I would request the panelists to spend about 2 to 3 minutes giving something like, you know, some action oriented points which can be picked up from others who are watching us. It might help them to devise a program maybe, or solve an issue. So starting with Veena ma'am again, you've been associated with women entrepreneurs, and women entrepreneurship is one, very surefire way of empowering women when they become job creators, or they are either self-employed or employ 1 or 2 people. So from your experience, ma'am, could you please tell us what have been some of the challenges, from the association you had with promoting women entrepreneurs, and, also bringing visibility to their efforts? What are some of the challenges, and how do you think those typical challenges can be overcome? It could be societal, it could be cultural, financial, and any other challenges.
Madhuri, the point which always comes to my mind, and I say it at every forum, that it's all in our mind. You rightly said there are stereotypes. And even today in our families, we are always telling girls can do this and boys can do this. Girls will play with this and boys will play with this. That needs to go. And it's world over. It's not in our country only. When I've been traveling, I've been discussing with friends, it's world over. So now that's so much ingrained in our minds that change of mindset is required. A thought revolution is required. See, when we do skilling programs, does any skilling program ever say this is not meant for women? Then why is it that for certain programs only men go for it and boys go for it?
Yeah.
So we need to encourage them.
Yeah.
We need to create positivity around them. So in our women entrepreneur network, I am trying to focus more on building confidence for budding entrepreneurs and for existing entrepreneurs, building confidence in them, giving them the confidence to look ahead, to think big, to dream big, and to be able to do it. And you're not less than anyone else. That's the message we want to give them. But it's so much ingrained in everyone's minds that we keep going back to the same thing, that we are not able to do this, we have these challenges. And I see we are also now starting a mentorship program for them. But I have noticed this is something which is really required at every stage, whether it is families, whether it's schools, whether it's our elders. The fact that equality has to be maintained at any cost. And of course, there are some limitations. So ecosystem has to be devised accordingly, but equal opportunities should be given. And again, coming back to grassroots level, I would say actions need to be taken to the extent that for education, there are a number of schemes of the government for girls. See, today the pipeline of girls is very minimal in comparison to men. And so we say there are very few women working and we need 50% of both. So how will this pipeline increase? It will only increase if we give them those opportunities. So there are a number of schemes of the government through the education ministry, through the science ministries. Let's encourage them through advocacy, through counseling. We need to set up infrastructure. Mr. Upadhyay mentioned about CSR funds that should be spent on setting up labs for girls. Why not? And so this kind of an environment and an ecosystem to be created for them, where they feel excited that they can do everything and sky is the limit for them. And I'm sure a change will come. It's coming gradually. And a couple of years down the line, I'm very confident and optimistic that we will see many, many more women coming in everywhere, whether entrepreneurship, whether gig workers, and any other field. Thank you.
Thank you. That's so positive and such a nice positive message about things are changing. Yes, we are undergoing the change. As they say, when you are in the process of undergoing the change, you will not realize it. It's only when you look back that you know how far you have come. So with Ms. Mona, I would like to know more about the sector which you represent, Ms. Mona, is, as you said, as we all know, it's mostly women dominated. But in case you need to hit a balance there, and also domestic work doesn't mean women only. As we know, there are men also who do domestic work. So how do you think this balance can be established, particularly in the backdrop of what is happening with COVID? Because this is one of the sectors which was badly affected. People didn't want their house helps to come in, and things are changing, of course, but how do you see this going to happen? And the second point which I would like to tell us more about is moving from informal to the formal sector for this particular job roles in this sector. Please unmute yourself.
Yes. So beginning with the sector, the domestic worker sector, this comprises of the whole caregiver sector actually. So caregiving for households, caregiving for small establishments, and caregiving non-clinical. So basically the sector comprises of household care, household supervisors, home cooks, and it falls under the National Industries classification of 3, 5, and 19. So it falls under a huge mandate of the NIC as well. Now, even then, as I mentioned right at the beginning, because it is unaccounted for. It is unaccounted for, and even while the Social Security Code 2020 has already mentioned the domestic workers and workers working in the informal sector to be made more inclusive, it becomes natural for the end user, be it industry or households, to actually register them, to have them, identified as insurance end users or for Social Security. So that will automatically happen. Now coming to the gender typification here. Now gender typification here did not start today. It started years back when women were identified with household chores and men were identified with going outside to work. And what we see today is a little change in our mobilization strategy brought about a sea change, when we took a small pilot and when we were mobilizing, we did not have just the participants to come in. We ensured that there were equal number at least equally represented men and women both, be it parents, be it sisters, brothers, children, anybody, So even the children were participating. And when this happened, we realized that there were more people signing up for the skill training from the male gender than from the women. And in fact, some of my regional representatives in the East have mentioned that, ma'am, next time you will come here with just skilling for women, you are going to meet with, black bands. I said, why? So he said, ma'am, because the women are earning more now than the men. And so there is a huge problem. And now they have decided that they have to be part of your mobilization and skilling. So what I'm trying to say is that somewhere it begins with us also how to non-typify these roles. I think the beneficiary or the person who would like to be skilled is not really thinking like that. It is something that is culturally and socially ingrained in us, and we really need to break free of that, stigma. We really need to break free. In fact, you will be surprised that most of the international migration, which is about 11 million workforce that's going out of the country, majority are women from Andhra, Kerala, and other states of India. And they have very progressive families taking care of their children's education behind, and the women are working alone in these countries. So what is it that enables international migration but does not enable domestic migration? It is the progressive policies and the environment that is available to them in those countries and not in our own country. So, stepping from informality to formality would be actually registering them for insurance and social security. That would be a big step forward. And I think that is across the board for all our supply chains. I think that is not just for our sector, the 3 NIC classifications, but I think that's across the board. And number 2, mobilization, as I said, during the time of mobilization, we need to bring the family together, as also mentioned by my co-panelists, that is a very important factor. And that is kind of counseling them and telling them what is the, the tunnel forward and what is the pathway forward. Number 3, we have made a very progressive strategy to actually develop climbing frames. Climbing frames is our tag word now going forward to actually create aspiration for the sector. And caregiving has become very important post-COVID and before COVID. I don't know whether we are post-COVID yet, but during COVID, and we really want to develop them and improve their skills so that they can handle the new challenges of sanitization. And as you rightly mentioned, there was a forced migration back, back to their villages. And what we are trying to do now is reach out and go locally to skill them and to create employment opportunities for them there. Because as rightly mentioned by even Veena ji and Mr. Upadhyay, Aditi and everybody, that rural workforce, what about our rural workforce? So we are actually consciously planning to take the skills locally and to develop a local workforce and give them local opportunities. So that by the time the policy becomes enabling and more progressive, at least they have an employment opportunity around their districts, their towns, and their villages. So that is the second step. And third, what I would like to say is here that progressive childcare and policies of the government will come a long way. Paternal leaves, a very simple thing. Half the women are not able to work in the factories and households because of maternal leaves, right? And they alone are responsible for childcare. In fact, the irony is that our sector is also providing child caregivers, So actually our trainee is not only looking after her own household, her own child, but is also looking after the child of the, the employer. So So then who looks after her own child? So basically a progressive environment there. I think these are 3 or 4 factors which would help this sector to move forward.
Thank you. Thank you so
Thank
much,
you.
Ms. Mona. Thank you for sharing such concrete action points,
Yes.
which are also very important at this point in time when we are looking at making this particular sector aspirational. I would request Dr. Upadhyay to share few action points from your experience, sir, in this area in the next 2 to 3 minutes, which could be useful for our audience.
Uh, Thank you, Doctor. Uh, the first thing is it has to be a whole of society response.
Mhm.
All the stakeholders, they must work together. Second is include women and men both and women organizations at the heart of COVID-19 response. Because most of the schemes, even programs, either we talk about COVID-19 response or we talk about sustainable development goals. I think whenever we talk about them, the focus must be very clear. The first thing we have to work together, government, corporate CSR, NGOs, and the community. And then whenever we design a socio-economic plan, the lives and futures of women and girls has to be kept in the mind, as Monaji also said. That must be the focus of it. So unless and until we change our focus and try to address these problems with heart, I don't think we'll be able to follow a solution. Because what is happening at this point of time, we are looking at temporary things. कि छोटा मोटा कुछ solve कर दो. Find some short-term solution, which will not work. So I think we all need to work together and find a long-term solution with heart and mind at one place. Thank you.
Okay, thank you, Dr. Upadhyay, for emphasizing on the sustainable aspect of the solution, which is long-term and sustainable. And I would now request Ms. Aditi to tell us more about her experience at ISECT and also few things, which could be like, say, takeaways for the audience in terms of mobilizing the students, creating that value for them, like, from the placement point of view. And most importantly, I would say reduction of attrition, because we see there are several factors which come in and add on to the attrition angle. So what do you have to say on this, Ms. Aditi?
Yeah, so as I mentioned earlier, we are into entrepreneurship development also, and our centers or our skill development facilities, we have currently 2,000 women entrepreneurs who are running these facilities in our network. So here I would like to mention that the whole ecosystem has, as everybody has mentioned here, the whole ecosystem has to go hand in hand. If the family has to be supportive, the community has to be supportive. And as I see, we started in about 1985, and till date we have around 2,000 women entrepreneurs, and these women entrepreneurs have become a very integral part of their society, because they play an important role of not only providing financial services through these centers, not only providing skill center services to these centers, to the women, and also various B2C services. So they are a pivotal, they are a pivot to the pivotal. They play a pivotal role in the society there and in that area. And what needs to be done is to make them confident enough, give them hand-holding support, which we are giving through our entrepreneurship development programs. We've currently launched an entrepreneurship development program in association with Atal Incubation Center, which is in-house for us. And we are making them future ready. We understand that due to pandemic, due to industrialization, Industry 4.0 setting in, there are a lot of changes, technology changes, financial management changes coming in. And therefore, we wanted our entrepreneurs to become future ready. And therefore, we've launched this program. So constant hand-holding support and instilling that confidence that no, you're going to do it, and you are a part of the whole ecosystem, and you can become the sole bread earner of your family, is one thing which is very much required. In terms of the skilling ecosystem, I would like to mention here that a few years back, we were compiling some case studies and looking at a lot of skilling initiatives we've done in our network. I came across a few girl students who were not there in beauty and wellness courses. They were not there in the sewing operator courses, but they had willingly taken up courses like welding operator, courses like tractor operators, and that was because their family was supportive and they wanted to do something on their own. So as mentioned by Upadhyay ji and Mona ma'am and Veena ma'am, the whole society has to work hand in hand and make them understand and counsel them that it's not that you will only be at home taking care of the children, taking care of the family, working as a primary caregiver of the family, but you can also go out, foray in the world and earn for yourself and for your family also. The third point I would like to mention here is that technology has always been one solution to reach the unreached. We understand that a lot of women are being left out from not only the labor force, but from the skilling ecosystem also. So here is the time we've seen everything going online. We've seen everything going to technology. So here is the time where skilling also gets into technology mode and everything is delivered online. If not online, at least in blended mode, where something is done in the center and something can be done, some course bit can be done through online mode. And I think that will also make a difference in including a lot of women in not only in the skilling ecosystem, but also in the labor force.
Yeah, thank you, Aditi, for sharing these concrete points. I would request the audience to please share your questions after about 5 minutes or so. I would like to conclude and bring together this discussion before that by asking all the panelists a very short question which they can answer within 1 minute, starting with Veena ma'am. Ma'am, today it looks like skilling is mostly being forced upon people. That's the kind of, we talk about, counseling. And also, if I have to say, how do we move from skilling by force to skilling by choice? What do you have to say in the context of women?
I feel skilling will have to be entire, as I said earlier, it will have to be skilling and beyond. And here I talk about not only for women, I talk about for men also, any kind of skilling. So it has to be a planned manner. And I'm taking half a minute more than what you're giving me in saying that this plan which is made should be supported by a proper gap analysis. So skilling should be done with an outcome, as you rightly said, that there has to be something there for them to be able to work forward, something to excite them. And I would also like to mention that we should not get carried away, Madhuri, by these reports which say that the workforce is going down. Because honestly speaking, we don't know what parameters they are using. We don't know what sample size they are using. We don't know whether gig workers are being counted for, whether so many entrepreneurs are being accounted for. You see, this negativity which we spread through these kind of reports, I feel, my apologies to all the organizations who do create them. I personally feel they are only arbitrary figures, and these figures can really demoralize the entire environment. We need positivity around us, and every failure should not be attributed to gender. So you need to have that kind of an environment around you, and with that, people will move to skilling rather than be forced to skilling. Thank
Yes.
you.
Thank you, ma'am, for enlightening us on that particular aspect about the report. Very rightly, you said we often use such figures and things to, I don't know, to maybe start a discussion or to create some kind of a thought process. But yes, we should be very careful when we use them. Thank you so much. Yes, Miss Mona, in the backdrop of skills and education coming together under one, under one minister right now, things are going to change. So what do you have to say about skilling by choice and not by force?
I think this is an excellent initiative because schooling and education are two very different things, while we go to the school, we don't necessarily get educated on life skills and on things we need to do. So the recent, if you see, the National Education Policy has clearly identified very innovative and new job roles, for school students. and students who would like to test their skills going forward on different roles. Many of our DWSSC job roles have been picked up and selected by the schools to actually train them in subjects which are similar. It's very similar to home science. It's like these are home science subjects, being a home cook, and when we did a mapping of what the demand would be like, we found there were a lot of boys who wanted to pick this art up. And just to share a very personal fact here, my son, who's a computer engineer, is the home chef today, and his cuisines are all over the Instagram, and he has more followers for being a home chef rather than being for a computer engineer. And this is something which is very new for me as well. So this is because in our upbringing, I never discriminated against who should do what, and they were all part of the ecosystem, messing up the kitchen equally, and cooking and trying to cook and not being able to cook. So I see that in my own personal experience, that how the evolution happens. So I think I would agree with also Veena ji completely here, that I also do not believe really when we get staggered by numbers, we have to look at the ecosystem around us. And there's a very famous saying: lies, damn lies, and statistics. So statistics are the worst form of lies, but it's not that we can do without them. We have to, sort of keep looking at statistics also. And it is not that organizations who are doing this work are doing frivolous work. We always need them. We need demand aggregation numbers and supply aggregation numbers. So having said that, we really have to move with what the realistic picture is going forward. And clearly, that's a reason why even our higher education numbers are not really translating into labor force participation. Because again, the progressive policies have to come in place. And I'm sure with insurance, with accountability, and actually their visibility, I think this will happen also. The labor force participation will also happen.
Thank you.
That is my take.
Thank you for reinstilling the hope and also the positive messages which are getting reinforced from all the panelists. It's so happy to hear this. Now, Dr. Upadhyay, what do you have to say if I have to ask you, how do we do skilling by choice and not by force? Could you please unmute yourself?
See, nowadays we generally talk about this new normal. I consider new normal as a new opportunity. This gives us an opportunity to look at things in a different way, in a more positive way. And unfortunately, wherever we want statistics at this point of time, we don't get them. Whether it's how much migration is there, how many people will come back to their jobs and all. Mart study says that 25% will not come back. So we have to look for skills for them in agriculture, in their own villages. And another thing which I like to add what Monaji said is also dignity of labor. We must learn dignity of labor, whether it's because what is happening daily, whether you switch on any TV, you get 20 messages, give money for this. In my chat, I get almost 50 messages in a week saying you give money. I think that's not the approach. Create opportunities, have dignity for labor, think about other dignity also. And then one thing which is becoming very clear now, even for us at this age also, is not to learn, basically to unlearn what we had learned earlier and then relearn. I think that's where this is a new opportunity, a new way of doing things, and with a new spirit in a very positive way. Thank you.
Thank you. Yeah, thank you. Now, Ms. Aditi, what do you have to say to this skilling by choice and not by force? After this, we'll take a couple of questions. So, yeah, please share your view.
So I'll be very short on this. As everybody has mentioned, the new initiative where vocational education and mainstream education will go hand in hand. I think about my schooling and the time I was in school. We were in a very strict and stringent manner had to take only these subjects, and we were not allowed to explore. We didn't have any choice than to take maybe maths, biology, and commerce. But now my child, when she grows up, she'll be having a lot of other aspects to look into, a lot of other areas she would want to explore. And she might take maths, but can become a theater artist also. So I think that this initiative is a start to skilling by choice and not skilling by force, where students and the youth get to explore a lot and get to explore new areas, so that they are not stringently looking at only one way.
Thank you. Thank you so much, panelists. There are two questions. I think I will just read them out. Anybody can answer this. We have Swarnima who's asking, is there any initiative being taken to mobilize those unaccounted women who are not being involved in supply chain yet, but they have a certain skill set? So is there any such initiative where such mobilization is happening?
Okay, can I come in here?
Yeah.
Okay, so speaking of our sector, when we do mobilization, we are actually reaching out to the far end corners of India, literally. So as far as we can, and as far as our manpower can support us, for instance, I'll give you the example of the state of Jharkhand. And Jharkhand has a lot of these women, potential women workforce who would like to be part of a supply chain, who would like to have additional skills, and who would like to do something more beyond what they are doing, you know. So we reach out to them through the village panchayats, through Asha, Anganwadi workers. We spread the message, and you know, they have a spiraling effect and they bring the women together. So in fact, these are the women who are coming, on the mobilization meets and seminar. Last virtual Jharkhand seminar that we had about 1,000, 2,000 participants. And, you know, they were actually falling out of the tent and they had to put up a screen to actually, convey the messages of the people. So this was unexpected. So this is what we try to do. We try to reach out to them, and make our mobilization, our, counseling, our messages more accessible to them. That is how we do it.
Thank you.
Aditi, I'll just come in here.
Yeah.
See, the point is, that we are talking about those whom we are skilling and whom we are mobilizing, but there are large numbers who get skilled even in their own clusters, in their own villages, from their seniors, their traditional heritage, art and craft and other skills that they are acquiring. So we, in a report which had been done by FICCI, I had chaired the task force, and this was on rehabilitation of migrant workers. There we had brought out that there needs to be a database. And I was happy to read the other day that the Labour Ministry is now wanting to register all migrant workers. So if somewhere there can be some scope of expanding that database to get even those who have not been formally skilled by the skilling centers, but yet are entrepreneurs, but yet have skills. So maybe gradually this will evolve. I'm sure it will evolve.
Yeah, and Veena ji, here I think the RPL program, recognition of prior learning, is also an effort to, recognize them and to get them into the mainstream.
So they're all interlinked, Mona.
They're all interlinked. I agree with
one
you.
leading to the other, but it's happening accidentally. Somewhere it all needs to be formalized into a
formalized,
proper
yes, without destroying the informality of the sector. Yes, it needs to be formalized. Absolutely.
Yeah. Thank you for sharing your views on this question. Now we are going to the last question of the day. There's a question: how can we motivate girl students whose parents do not allow them to go for a job after completion of vocational education? This is about parents, motivating parents, telling them, educating them, I guess. Ms. Mona, your story is like, an exemplary story about you and like what you told us about your son. So if you have heard Ms. Mona talking, I think that was partly answering this question, but is there something more you would like to share any one of you, Aditi maybe, or anyone?
Yeah.
I think Mona ma'am was going to say something. I think I'll give her a chance.
No, please carry on. Please carry on. I'll add later.
Yeah, so I also talked about this when I was talking about mobilization and counseling of parents. So one is that instilling that interest from the beginning of the student coming in, and telling them that it is not only about earning more for your family, but giving the girl student that confidence that she is going to stand up on her own and become a pivotal person in her own family is one thing which we should do. And here again, the counseling comes into picture, where the counselor has to instill that kind of trust in the parents that she is in a safe environment. She's going to be here she's going to be safe here. And the kind of job roles I was talking about, that we try and bring job roles from the vicinity, so that she doesn't have to travel much. She is in front of her parents and is then performing well. When once the parents see that the girl is confident enough, is traveling on her own, is earning good, they will themselves then turn around and give her that extra push to work for her own. So I think bringing in trust from the beginning of the value chain is one major aspect here. So Mona ma'am, if you want to add something.
Yeah, just one point here, that yes, from the very beginning point, when you're counseling them and mobilizing them to actually understand why a particular skill is important for their child. And I would here again not gender typified, be it a girl or a boy. I think it would be equally important for the person or for the parent to understand that these are also basic life skills. You know, even being able to sew your own garment, or to be able to mend it, it's a basic life skill. So yes, what Aditi said, but also on the other end, what we have seen in our sector, even sensitizing the end user, the person who's actually employing them, is very important. Because this is our experience with international migration and domestic migration. Why international migration happens and why domestic migration does not happen. So it is the law, the legal framework, where the policy has to come in, and the end user that has to be sensitized on the dignity of the employee, on the safe working environment, on the respect, on the right to leaves, on the right to, have their own passports or their identities, those kind of things. So that is another factor. And that, I'm sure, will help the parents also to help their children migrate and do better.
Yeah.
Madhuri, to add to that, the sensitization through these Anganwadis can also happen, where in the villages, because the example I gave you about Noida, where we did those batches. So for
Yeah.
the first batch, we had a problem. But when the following batches happened, and I'm told now batch after batch is doing it there, and the resistance is not there at all. So once they see what's happening and how good their daughters have been safe and they've done well, then automatically. So it has to somehow ramify into all our villages, into rural India. So
Right.
maybe there can be some structured program for this, where they are able to understand the benefits of this whole thing, rather than just doing it in isolated cases. So maybe a program to that effect for parents is required.
Yes. Yes, definitely. Thank you, ma'am. The role of parents has been highlighted adequately by the panelists, and also the need for having something structured. So I think we are also running short of time. We are already, we have exceeded by a few minutes. So I would like to bring this to a closure. But before that, I would like to inform the participants that tomorrow's session will be on apprenticeship, the way forward for industry integrated skilling of youth. So for all the participants who have been regularly, participating in the virtual events, this is going to be the topic tomorrow, and the link is going to be the same tomorrow. So please join us. And on behalf of the organizers and NSN, which is also a partner, a knowledge partner for this entire series, I'm very happy here to extend a whole note of gratitude. A big thank you for all the panelists for sharing your views. I think this has helped us in bringing out many aspects of skilling women. But then, as we decided right in the beginning, skilling women doesn't mean only for women. So it has become a kind of a holistic look at skilling from various perspectives, and you have highlighted many points. And this is going to be documented and presented after the virtual event is over. We'll be sharing the link with you. So if you wish to take this forward, like most of you have said, there is a need to streamline, to structure, to bring in a kind of method to the kind of, I wouldn't want to use the word madness, but the chaotic scenario in which we are operating. I think that is much needed. So thanks again, all of you. I would like to close this session now with your permission, and I look forward to be in touch with you. Thank you, ISEC. Thank you, CII, and thanks everyone for being there. All the
Thank you.
participants. Thanks a lot.
Thank you.
Thank you.